We can start, right? I think
Yep.
I'll go for the share screen first.
I'm here.
Ooh. Okay. Yesterday, rather this morning for you, we were talking about lay Buddhism, and we did have some discussion. Uh, Perhaps I would like to hear from our our venerables here. What are your views on this matter? Because we heard from the lay people, but perhaps the venerables can give us some ideas or feedback on what was discussed so far.
On the lay Buddhism,
Yes.
before I became a monastic, I was a very active lay Buddhist. The place where I was serving is also called Jushiling, also this, because it's in an island and we don't have monks there. So all the lay Buddhists form a group, and they first started.
Where is that? Where is the island?
In Labuan.
Oh, Labuan. Oh,
yeah, that's next to Brunei.
Yeah.
Very small island.
I have been there several times.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. So so we did a lot of things ourselves. We went to funeral service. Because there's no monks, so people who are not Buddhist, but they want the Buddhists to go and chant for them. So they always ask us to go. So we will just go as all the Buddhist group, lay Buddhists. There's no monks there. Unless there's a monk visiting, then we will have the monk lead us. Otherwise, it's all just lay Buddhists doing all the things. So, and also like you said, when we do big Dhamma assembly, then we will invite monks to come and lead us, because we thought that is not so appropriate for us to, do something that big. We might not be able to do a good thing. So usually invite monks to come and do it. So in a way, I think lay Buddhists, I was very active, and we did a lot of things there, and we helped a lot of the people there as well, and also teach the children class, and it's a good thing. It's not that, and people are more friendly and not scared to talk to us, because we are just, lay friends, not monks. And sometimes they're afraid to approach monks. So sometimes lay Buddhists can do a lot of things also, because people might not talk to monastics so easily. But in a way, now I'm become a monastic here, and we were trying to train all the lay teachers here. As you see, all the students here are our lay teachers. So we're training them. So because it's very helpful also for the lay practitioners to help spread the Dhammas, beside the monks, can't do a lot sometimes, because of our, sometimes because of the appearance, and also the way we are, we cannot just go anywhere and talk to people. So a lay Buddhist is, in a way, I think they are both, that you can work together. You need monks and you need lay Buddhists also. It's not like, you only need one and not need the other. That's my view. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else would like to add something?
Yes, I like that the lay Buddhists, the lay teachers are trained by monastics. I think that's important, as opposed to someone who's just self-taught, a lay person who's just self-taught and goes out on their own and hangs out their proverbial shingle. So I think that the lay teachers should be taught by monastics.
You mean lay people should not teach, or to be taught by the monastics only?
Yes, the lay teachers should be taught by monastics, and then they are qualified to help lead the lay people.
Yeah. I think that would be the case. Otherwise, whom do we learn from?
Right.
But there are also cases where lay people learn from lay people.
Yes.
There are also cases when monks learn from monks only. But I think in the open world today, we can't escape from the fact that learning is quite open. You can learn from anybody. It's not only from monastics or lay people, even people of other religions. Sometimes we sit with them and we learn from them. And we go to school, we learn secular subjects. So it's an open learning system now. So I think it's quite difficult to insist that only monks can teach the Dhamma to the lay people. And in fact, this insistence did not work at all. And today, in the Buddhist colleges and the universities, it's quite common now for the lay people to be engaged as teachers. Okay. So yesterday, I was sharing with you during the time of the Buddha, who were some of the outstanding lay Buddhists who demonstrated that they were not only just there to perform dharma, to accrue merits, but also to practice and learn the Dhamma to the extent that they were able to teach the Dhamma also, and able to bring in a lot of people to come to the Dhamma. Then I shared a case of where there were only monks, where without lay people, then Buddhism collapsed very rapidly in India as well as in Southeast Asia, in Sumatra and Malaya. Then I shared a case of in Japan, a case where actually there's no more monk, only lay people. Even then, the lay people still insisted that those who look like monks, who appear as like monks, are treated as monks, and they would like to invite these monastics who are married and with a family, who run their own business, and who only perform certain rites and rituals at certain time. They are also regarded as monks, despite the fact that if we go on our present day standard, they are considered as lay people. Then I went on to talk about the rise of lay and monastics, some of these outstanding lay people who were involved in bringing about revival of Buddhism in recent times, such as Dr. Balasekhara, Princess Pun Dismay, Sulak Sivaraksa, and so on. Now I would like to go on to the suttas, the doctrinal perspective of defining who is a Buddhist. Who is a Buddhist? In the Pali tradition, we say a lay Buddhist man is called a upasaka, and a lay Buddhist lady, we call her a upasika. And in this sutta, Chandala Sutta, the discourse of the outcast, then the Buddha mentioned who is a false follower. A false follower is a person who lacks faith, saddha, and he's not morally virtuous, talking about sila. He believes in rituals to invoke luck, and relies on luck and not on karma, and he seeks the right gift worthy outside the teachings, and gives his priority there. So Buddha mentioned here that if you lack all these things, then this is not a true follower. Meaning to say, we can be a lay Buddhist by taking refuge in the Triple Gem, the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, this is what most people do, but that is only the outer or the peripheral. That you are like I registered as a student. I take a refuge ceremony, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, but you need to do something more substantial, something inside you to be a true follower. So the Buddha says, if not, then you are a false follower. You are not really genuinely following. So the Buddha mentioned in the same sutta the qualities of a true lay Buddhist Dharma, true lay Buddhist. First, we must have faith, saddha. Faith or saddha, referring to the Saddha in the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So we not only go through the ceremony of accepting the Buddha Dharma Sangha as our refuge, but also must be from inside our heart that strong confidence or faith in the Buddha Dharma Sangha, that you are willing to follow the Dharma and to support the Sangha and to honor the Buddha. Okay. And the next one always start with sila. Okay. We must follow the basic sila. So for the lay Buddhist, the fundamental precepts are the 5 precepts. Then the next one is he does not believe in rituals to invoke luck, but he uses his wisdom. You know, traditionally in India, during the time of the Buddha, many people believe that you can gain liberation by performing a lot of rituals. For example, you sacrifice some animals, which is even practiced today. You practice animal sacrifice, or certain other rituals like they call it, you know, sometimes they have this what I call it, cow rituals. Cow rituals means you behave like a cow. You sleep like a cow with your 2 hands folded inside, and you eat only vegetarian food, and then you behave like a cow. Okay, they call it cow rituals. And then some they have certain rituals like fire worship. You have fire worship actually is a traditional religious practice that was said to come from Iran or Persia, and that came into India and was also practiced at that time. So you perform a lot of rituals, you throw rice and grains and whatnot into the fire, and thinking that the fire would burn away all your defilements, all your evils. And some would go to the river to wash, and thinking that all your sins would be washed away by the holy water. Those were rituals. Then the Buddha says, no, that was not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to have wisdom. Okay? So specifically ask us not to be indulged in rituals. And then the next one is not on luck or by chance, but on karma. Okay? There are 3 teachings that the Buddha said are wrong teachings. Number 1, to believe that everything is due to luck or due to chance, randomly it happens. Well, that something happened to me because by chance. Okay. Then number 2 is something that happened to me is due to God determinism. So the Buddha said, if you kill or steal or break all those 5 precepts, you can claim that you are not responsible because God determined. Okay, it's already predetermined by God. So that's also a form of wrong teaching. And then the Buddha said the third one is you believe that whatever that you happen to you or that is you want to make it happen is due to your past karma. So sometimes let's say somebody falls sick, then we say it's due to your past karma. And the Buddha says no, it has to be not due to your past karma, but the past karma bring you to what you are here today. But what will happen is due to the karma that you are doing. So your past karma will bring you to what you are here today, but it would not determine what will happen next. What will happen next will determine on your present karma. Okay? Just like your past karma bring you to this talk here this morning, tonight here. But what will happen after that is your determination, your karma. Whether you want to listen or you don't want to listen is up to you. Okay? You can choose to listen or choose not to listen. That is your present karma. Okay. Then number 5, he does not seek the gift worthy outside the teaching, but gives his charity here, chaga, charity. Chaga, or sometimes we use the word dana. Dana is more of the external performance. We offer food, we say dana, but chaga is more of the mental energy. That in your mind, there is a kind of generosity, performance out of your willingness to give away, to be detached. That's called chaga. So chaga and dana, actually, they are quite close. But dana is more of an external performance. So here, if you look at this, basically there are 4 things that are often mentioned in the Buddhist sutta for a lay Buddhist, and that also mentioned by this Hataka, how he brought lay people to the Buddha. The Buddha asked him, how you managed to get these people to come to see me. Then he said, I perform 4 things, and out of the 4 things is Saga, Sila, Panya, and Chaga. So in Chinese it's Xing Jie Si Hui. So these were the 4 major items that a lay Buddhist should acquire or should follow, so that we can substantially, in essence, can learn something from the Buddha. Okay, so these were the definition. Now we are going to deal with another topic now, on what do we think of lay Buddhism. This one I take it from a paper that I presented in a forum on lay Buddhism, in an international forum on lay Buddhism. I try to argue or try to present the legitimacy of lay Buddhism from 4 perspectives. Whether it's legitimate for us to talk about lay Buddhism. Number 1, I talk about the meaning of Sangha. This one will take a little bit of time to explain. And then number 2, to emphasize that the Buddha preached to all. Number 3, the Dharma is for all. And number 4, the equality of monks and nuns and lay people. Okay, so there were 4 arguments that I put forth. But the first one, the meaning of the Sangha, this is the one that I would like to present now. What do we mean by Sangha? Because when Ouyang Chen said lay people are also Sangha, this aroused a lot of debates during his time and even until today. So we need to know what is the meaning of Sangha. So when we want to know the meaning of the Sangha, we look at the virtues of the Sangha, or we call it the names of the Sangha. When we do this, when we perform service, morning service or Sunday service to the Buddha Sangha, Buddha Dharma Sangha, we normally chant the virtues of the Buddha Dharma Sangha. Then when we come to Sangha, we chant like this. Supatipanno Bhagavato, Uchupatipanno Bhagavato, Savaka Sangho, Nyaya Patipanno Bhagavato, Savaka Sangho, Samichi Patipanno Bhagavato, Savaka Sangho, Yadidang Chattari Purinsa Yukani, Atta Purisa Pugala. Then we continue. Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, Ahuneyo, Pahuneyo, Takkeneyo, Anjali Karaniyo, Anutran Punyake Tang Upasati. Now you look at the verses that we chant. Supatipanno Bhagavato. Bhagavato means well gone. Here we are talking about the Buddha. Okay, I make it very simple. We're talking about the Buddha. Supatipanno, su, not good, okay? So, or enter the right thing, su. So, Supatipano, hey, Bhagavato, the full sentence here should be Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. Savaka, I mentioned to you already. Savaka means listener, or the meaning of the word Savaka means listener, but the actual meaning means disciple. Okay, disciple. So it's a disciple of the Buddha on the right path, or the right way, or the right path. And then Uju Patipano. Uju means straight, on the straight way. No need to go winding here and there. This is a straight way. Nyaya Patipano, the straight way, the true way. Okay. Samichi Patipano, the proper way. Okay. Yadidam Chattari Purisa Yugani Asa Purisa Pugala. Yadidam Chattari Purisa Pugala, Asa Purisa Pugala. These are the 4 pairs of person, the 8 types of people. These are the key words here. 4 pairs of person and the 8 types of people. So when we say we take refuge in the Sangha, we are taking refuge in the 4 pairs of person and the 8 types of people. Then, Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. This is the order of the Blessed One. Ahuneyo, worthy of gifts. Pahuneyo, worthy of hospitality. We are, courteous to them, show our hospitality to them. Dakineyo, worthy of offering, we offer things to them. Anjali Karaniyo, Anjali, put our 2 palms together, our fingers together. Anjali Karaniyo, worthy of veneration. Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasati, unsurpassed fertile field of merit. That's why Yang Chen was arguing that lay people can also become field of merit, whereas traditionally Sangha, the word Sangha is a traditional field of merit. So we need to understand from here the meaning from this, just from these verses here. First, we say Savaka Sangho, disciple of the Buddha, the Sangha of the disciple of the Buddha. Nowhere in these verses here was mentioned Bhikkhu Sangho or Bhikkhuni Sangho. It's not mentioned. It is a community, but Sangha means community. Modern terms, association, okay? An organization. So Sangho. So Savaka Sangho, disciple, community of the disciple. It is not mentioned as Bhikkhu Sangho, community of the Bhikkhu, or not mentioned as Bhikkhuni Sangho, community of the Bhikkhunis. Just Savaka Sangho, disciple. Then who is this so-called disciple? It's more clearly mentioned here. These are the 4 types of person and the 8 types of people. Who are the 4 pairs of person? The 4 pairs of person are people who have practiced the teachings of the Buddha up to the extent that they have entered in, they have achieved Sotapanna. Sotapanna means they have entered into they have achieved the first stage of sainthood. If you cannot remember the Pali Sanskrit term, it's okay. We mention it as the first stage of sainthood. Okay. Then we have the Sagadagami, the second stage of sainthood. Then we have the third stage, Anagami. Anagami, the third stage of sainthood. Okay. Then we have the Arahanta, the 4th stage of sainthood. And in Theravada Buddhism, Arahant means you have already achieved enlightenment. So these 4 stages, these people who are in either one of these, like just now, yesterday we mentioned about Chitta, Anagami, King Suddhodana finally became an Arahant. So by that definition, King Suddhodana is inside here. Chitta of Alawi is in Chitta of Machikatanda is inside here. Okay, Hataka of Alawi is inside here. Even Dr. Jiwaka, these are the people who are one of the 4 persons. If one of you here also achieve one of these steps here, then you are also one of them. Okay, you are also a Sangha member now. But if not, then you are Putujana. You are just an ordinary human being. You don't qualify here. Okay, so the stage of spiritual attainment that you have attained. Then these 4 pairs of person, these four types of people, when broken up, then become 8. Broken up means the person who has entered into Sotapanna and the person who has fully achieved Sotapanna. Means enter and achieve. That's one pair. Then the next one, the person who has entered and achieved the second stage of sainthood, and the third one, the person who has entered and achieved the third stage of sainthood, and the fourth one, the person has entered and attained the 4th stage of sainthood. So when we talk about a Sangha that we take refuge in, we are referring to this type of people. People with certain, who have achieved certain degree of a spiritual attainment, not ordinary people. So by this definition, if you are one of these, then you are actually a Sangha member, regardless of the outer appearance, whether you are lay people or not lay people. Okay? Well, of course, some scholars argue that no. What you must think about the next sentence here. Ahuneyo, pahudeyo, dakchineyo, anjali karaniyo, anuttara punya keta. So I think Buddha Gosa mentioned that when you say Ahuneyo, worthy of gifts, he was talking about, the Buddha was referring to monks only. Only monks we give offerings, but not to the lay people. But of course, that is his commentary, his opinion, not generally accepted because it's interpretation. Whereas if you just go from this Yaridam Chattari Purisa Yukari after Purisa Pukala, then he just mentioned these people. He did not mention whether you are lay people or non-lay people. Okay? So this was my brief explanation. I have written it down here so that in case you need to prepare notes, you don't have to rely on my voice. The term Sangha mentioned in the Triple Gem refer to a community of enlightened people. Okay. Just now the 4 pairs of the 4 types of people and 8 pairs of people, we give them a term, we call them Arya Sangha. Arya Sangha means the holy Sangha, or sometimes translated as the spiritual Sangha. Okay, regardless of whether they are monastics or lay people. But in the traditional Buddhist communities, we have always restricted the word Sangha to refer to only monastics, regardless of whether its members are enlightened or otherwise. So, but in first one, we were talking about from the definition of Sangha from the scriptures. Then the second part, we are talking about traditional practices. Traditional practices, we often regard Sangha as community of the monastics. And we do not bother about whether that monastic has all these qualities. Okay, we only say regardless of whether they are enlightened or otherwise. Okay, that's traditionally, that's how we perceive. Okay, I want to stress again, Sangha, like I mentioned just now, is a community, association, and not referring to any particular individual. Therefore, it is hard to say that community, let's say you have a community of monks, that all the monks are Arya or enlightened people. It's not possible, right? When a person is newly ordained into the monkhood, he or she might not be even ordained into the monkhood for a long time does not mean that he or she is enlightened. So it's a community. So in a community like a school, there are some good students, there are some bad students. There are some students who have passed, and there are some students who have not passed. So Sangha is a community, we must understand. When it's a community, it's unlikely that you have all having the same standard, complying to the definition of Yadidang Cattari Purisa Yukani Artha Purisa Pugala. Okay? So, but this is the one that we take refuge. Okay? The spiritual Sangha or the holy Sangha is the one that we take refuge. And how do you represent them? Now we talk about symbology. How do you represent them? You see the Buddha, we have the Buddha images to represent the Buddha. Or we use the Bodhi tree, or we use the pagoda to represent the Buddha. Then we talk about the Dhamma. We use the suttas to represent the Dhamma. Because when you say the teachings of the Buddha is something like virtual, virtual, not concrete. How do you represent him? You represent the Dhamma. So we use a sutta. Then when we talk about the Arya Sangha, the holy community of the four types of people, 8 pairs of person, how do we represent them? Think about it. How do you represent them? Do you want to venture an answer now? Somebody would like to say? The answer is here. It's best represented by the community of monastics, since they are the most conspicuous of the Buddhist community. The other day, I think yesterday, Lisa Wong was talking about representation of symbols. So when we say we take refuge in the Buddha, in there's a ceremony, we use the Buddha image as a symbol for us to pay respect. Then we said we pay respect to the Dhamma. We use the sutta to represent. And if you use Arya Sangha, that we pay respect. The Arya Sangha is a community of holy people, community of enlightened people. How do we represent them? We get the present monastics to represent them. Get what I mean now? We get the present community of disciples to represent them. Okay? So, my observation is, Aoyang Chen's argument that lay people are also members of the Sangha did not take into consideration that lay person must belong to the 4 pairs and 8 types first. So, when Aoyang Chen claimed that the lay people are also members of the Sangha, to which we can pay respect and honor and so on, he did not take into consideration that these lay people must also comply to the condition of being one of the 4 pairs and 8 types first. Okay. So now to understand this further, I make this chart so that we can understand better the issues that I brought up just now. Now, when we take refuge in the Buddha, we actually take refuge in the enlightenment Buddha. Okay, the foreseeing or the enlightened, the body of the Buddha. And for the Buddha, enlightenment is embodied in the body of the Gautama Buddha. And to represent the Gautama Buddha, who had entered into Mahaparinibbana 2,500 years ago, we now have Buddha images, we have pagoda, we have Bodhi tree, and so on to symbolize him, to represent him. Okay. Similarly, for Dhamma, when we say we when we say we take refuge in the Dhamma, we are taking refuge in the words of the Buddha or the teachings of the Buddha. It's a general term. Then the teachings in details such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Noble Path, the 10 Kusala Karma, the 5 precepts, and so on. These are the teachings. And we represent them with the sutta. Okay? That's why in traditional Buddhist ceremonies in at least in my country here, when we have a ceremony, a religious ceremony, normally we would have an item in the program is to honor the triple gem. And to honor the triple gem, someone would come, the first person would carry a Buddha image on top of his head, okay, to symbolize the entrance of the Buddha. The second person following him would carry some sutta on top of his head to represent the sutta. And the third one, if you choose any layman, that representation is not strong enough. If you choose any lay person, even if he is a Sotapanna or whatever, it's not conspicuous. So we choose a monk. Okay, the third one will be a monk. So it's Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So now, back to the Sangha here. Arya Sangha or a spiritual Sangha. This is the one that we take refuge in. And the Arya Sangha, the holy Sangha or the spiritual Sangha is the community of enlightened disciples. Okay, remember the community of enlightened disciples. But how do you represent them? I mean, this community of disciples, how do you represent them? Just now here, you have, let's say, teachings to say that these teachings are the Dhamma. But this Arya spiritual Sangha, this is virtual. You can't see. You can't touch virtual. So what you do, you have monastic Sangha to represent them. The monastic, the order of monks or nuns that we have today, they represent the Sangha. Okay? So when Aoyang Chen tried to say that not only this, but lay people, that means you are breaking up this part into this so-called monastic Sangha must have lay people and not lay people. But we know the outward appearance is important also because this is the most conspicuous. Okay? But like I mentioned, Sangha is a community. It is still not, it's still virtual. So you need to have monks to represent. Okay? I just tell you a story to let you know the difference between Sangha and individual monks. During the time of the Buddha, there was a very devout lay Buddhist who performed dana regularly to the Sangha. So one day he invited a lot of monks to his house and offered dana to the Sangha, community of monks. And he respectfully offered dana to each and every monk, including a monk who was quite notorious and quite greedy and having a bad habits. So that monk, after receiving the dana, which was offered to him respectfully, he was very happy. So in the evening, he came back to the same house, to the lay person, and asked for more offering. So by this time, the lay person just take the food, and just simply chuck it to him, not in a respectful manner. So the wife of that lay person saw this behavior. So she asked her husband, "Why do you behave like this? This morning you offered the food to all the monks, including this one, in a very honorable way, in a very respectful way. Why in the afternoon you show no respect for him?" Then that lay person mentioned, in the morning when he came, he represented the Sangha. He represented the Sangha. So since he represented the Sangha, I show him the respect as he represented the Sangha. But in the afternoon when he came alone. In his personal capacity, he is not representing the Sangha. Therefore, I don't have to show respect to him because I don't actually respect him. In the morning, I respected him because he represented the Sangha. So this story tells us the difference. That's why in Southeast Asia, or my Sri Lankan traditions, when you offer food to the monks, you like to invite at least 4 monks. Because community of monks, Sangha, is represented by at least 4 months. Okay, if less 1 month, 2 months, 3 months is considered individual. But 1, 2, 3, 4 and above becomes community. Okay, that's why just now when we chanted there, Savaka Sangho, the community of the disciple, is already mentioned as community. So to represent a community, just like you send a group of people to, let's say you send a group of students outside, you send a group of students that represent the school. But if you send one, maybe it's individual basis on individual basis. So in this case, this monastic Sangha, we have at least 4 months. So in Southeast Asia here, in Malaysia, when we offer food or dana to the monks, we normally invite at least 4. Then it is called a Sangikadana. If less than that, then you are just offering dana to that particular monk. It's not a Sangikadana. So there's a difference between a group. And when it's a group, it's an incomparable field of merit mentioned earlier, an incomparable field of merit. An unsurpassed field of merit. Okay. That's why in my place here, in my monastery here, when lay people come over and invite monks, they would tell my chief reverend, Reverend, I would like to invite you to my house for a house dana today. Can you bring another 3 or 4 monks? Make sure you have 4 monks. Because they want to make sure that they are offering to the Sangha and get the field of and into the proper field of merit. That shows the Sri Lankans, whether by tradition or by knowledge, they know about the importance of having 4 months. So they would tell my chief reverend, can you send at least 4 months? The chief reverend say, I only have 2 or 3 months here. Ask your son to become monks. So that was his answer. Okay. So you know the difference now. So now community of monks represented by monks. Okay. That's the practice now. So I give you a comparison. When we say education, education is a virtual word. But what is education? So more specifically, the school system. Okay. And then when you say I want to this school and that school compete, can you send a school to go and compete? A school is a physical building. So you send the students represent the school. Okay. So I hope that now we fully understand the significance of this the Sangha or the meaning of Sangha. Then we can understand that the Sangha that we pay refuge, or the Sangha that we take refuge in, refers to the spiritual Sangha or the Arya Sangha or the noble Sangha that exists virtually, okay, not in physical form, because it's a community, and that community is best represented by the monastic Sangha, and the monastic Sangha represented by the monastics, by the monks and nuns. Okay. Therefore, we have some extra respect for the monks and nuns. Okay. So by this definition, you look at the Aoyang Jian's argument on incomparable field of merit. Well, if you want to say that laymen, individual laymen are also incomparable field of merit, I think I do not agree based on this argument. If that layman is one of the four and one of the 8 enlightened people, and he can be considered as a member of this community. But even then, individually, he is not an incomparable field of merit. Another thing we need to know is here you put that unsurpassed field of merit, means it's the highest. Okay, that does not mean others are not field of merit. Okay, so Aoyang Jian is not wrong in that sense. Okay, any good deeds that you do to somebody else, you accrue merit. That becomes your so-called field of merit. Right? People say listening to the Dhamma is a form of merit. So by sharing the Dhamma, you are accruing merit. The person who is who is listening to your Dhamma is your field of merit. Okay? The only argument here is anuttara, unsurpassed, highest. So in that sense, Aoyang Jian is not wrong. A lay person also can become field of merit, as long as you don't say lay person is also the highest field of merit. Okay. Okay. So my first argument about legitimacy of lay Buddhism, about the Sangha, I have explained here the meaning of Sangha. Okay. Then there are other supporting arguments. The next one is the Buddha preached to all. Buddhism is meant for all. The Buddha did not preach only to the monks, but to all, including the beggars, scavengers, slaves, right up to kings and ministers, all people of all castes, and monks and lay people. Okay, but no doubt he teaches more to the monks because he was living in the community of monks. The Buddha himself is living in the community of monks. By the way, just now when we were talking about the Sangha, the Buddha himself said, I am also a member of the Sangha. So that's why Sankikadana, or offering of the Sangha, offering of ceremony to the Sangha, considered very high because that includes the Gautama Buddha. Okay? That includes the Gautama Buddha. Then now, so the Buddha preached to all, regardless of the status and caste, regardless of the background. But no doubt, because of him living together the communities of monks who were devoted to the learning of the Dhamma and practicing the Dhamma, so most of his teachings were meant for the monks. Okay. So by the way, when you preach the Dhamma, when you learn the Dhamma, the suttas always begin with the Evang Me Sutta. So thus have I heard, and then so on and so forth. Then you need to read this preface where it tells you where the Buddha taught this to whom. So you must be careful because some of the teachings were only meant for those people who were very bent on the spiritual path. Some of the teachings were meant for lay people. For example, Sikalawada Sutta, the Buddha was talking to the young man Sikala. So his teaching was quite different from when he was teaching to the monks. Okay, so we need to look at the preface so that we know whom his target group was. Then the next one is the Dhamma is for all. One Dhamma, one taste. One Dhamma, one taste, because now whoever listens to the Buddha would gain the same enlightenment. So some will become Sotapanna, some will become Arahant and things like that. And this is regardless of whether you are in the robes or you are not in the robes, regardless of whether you are a monk or you are not a monk. So we can taste the same thing, whether you are lay or not lay people. Then the third item is equality. In the realm of spiritual practice, monastics are not regarded as more superior than lay people. In the words of Venerable Ying Sun, monastics and lay differ only in form. They are in essence the same. This is what Venerable Ying Sun, for most Buddhist scholars, of our present time in Taiwan, he categorically stated that monks and lay people are in essence the same. Okay, but external form different, yes, but the ability to gain spiritual attainment is also the same. Okay, and this means this also take away the concept of an intermediary that you find in a theistic religion. For example, between God and you, usually you have a minister or a bishop or someone, to do on your behalf. That is also not, that is considered as like a Brahmanistic practice. Whereas in Buddhism, that is not the case. Okay. Sorry, I leave this. I forgot to put this on the slideshow. Wonder whether you could see them properly. Sometimes I got carried away. So my lecture here actually intended to foster a better Sangha and laity relationship, like what I mentioned earlier. When you have only monks only, Buddhism will disappear very fast. And if you have only lay people only, then Buddhism would also deteriorate. Then we need to have a very strong Sangha laity relationship, as shown during the time of the Buddha. But now we need to look at the future trends, And here Bhikkhu Bodhi said, one very important thing is the Sangha must continuously upgrade their knowledge in Dhamma as well as mundane subjects. He said that this is an information age, an age of widespread higher education, an age of knowledge explosion. This is an age where everyone seems to know something about mundane subjects, and even Buddhism. This has resulted in a seismic shift in Sangha laity relationship. And this is very important point that was brought up by Venerable Bhikkhu, Venerable Bodhi. By the way, before I go further to explain the content, I put here Venerable Bodhi. He uses, in his own way, he always used the word Bhikkhu Bodhi, to the extent that we always call him Bhikkhu Bodhi. But as a matter of protocol, it is wrong for us who are junior to him, who are learning from him, to address him as Bhikkhu. Because the word Bhikkhu in the Buddhist tradition is for the senior to address the junior. Okay? The senior to address the junior. So when we address a senior, we call him a Bhante or teacher. We don't call him a Bhikkhu. Okay? So, but for he himself, humbly, you address himself as Bhikkhu. But for us to address him as Bhikkhu, then it is not right in the protocol. So that's why I amended to put Venerable Bodhi, and most of the articles he wrote, which I used in my Buddhist magazine here, I would change that word Bhikkhu to Venerable. Okay, it's just like I humbly call myself, my humble self is Ang, but you don't call me your humble self is Ang. Okay, it is self-humility to address himself as Bhikkhu, but we don't call him Bhikkhu. Okay. So Venerable Bodhi said, because of this widespread higher education now, lay people are exposed to a lot of subjects. and even to Buddhism. And in fact, today, there are a lot of scholars doing research on Buddhism, and many of them are much more well-versed than many monks. And some of the scholars, especially scholars in the West, I think that they know Buddhism much better than we Buddhists in the East. So this has brought about a situation where the monks can no longer, the Sangha can no longer rely on its past glory to lead the Buddhist community. In the past, in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and so on, knowledge comes from the temples. Before the advent of this secular education today, you have to go to the temples to be educated. So temples were like a fortress, was like educational institution. It was temples were community centers. So they were held in high esteem, and sometimes the temple monks were also doctors, giving prescriptions on for ailment treatment and things like that. So gone are those days. So now you only have the spiritual practice to impress your followers, or your knowledge to impress the followers. So the Sangha, as advised by the Venerable, must continuously upgrade our knowledge in the Dhamma, and as well as mundane subject. Now this is very interesting because mundane subject was never an important issue, because in the past you could preach the Dhamma just talking about the Dhamma. But today, in an audience, someone will suddenly raise a question and challenging your Dhamma from the scientific perspective. And if you are caught and you have not much idea of a mundane subject, you will be in big trouble. So we need to know now a lot about, healthcare, about how to take care of a terminally ill person. A lot of mundane knowledge required now in this complex world today, and we need to know. That's why there was a big difference between Tai Chi and the rest, and the new and the old, between Tai Chi and the rest, in the sense that Tai Chi was even talking about Buddhism and science when he was lecturing in the university in Germany. He was talking about Buddhism and science. So Tai Chi was trying to show that he knew something about the mundane subject, trying to create a relationship between the Dhamma and the mundane subject. Then the second thing, the Bhikkhu Bodhi mentioned, the Sangha must not only face the challenges of the modern times, but must take the lead. In an era of materialism, Buddhism must not passively respond, but must actively lead the way to the right direction. Sangha, as supreme leader of Buddhism, model of mankind, must take up this responsibility. Sangha must maintain its characteristics, insist on simple and peaceful way of life, observe precepts, and purify the mind. I think our Venerable Bodhi is a very far-sighted man of vision. He specifically mentioned the Sangha must maintain its characteristics. Sangha has got characteristics of its own, simple and peaceful way of life. There's a tendency now for the Sangha to copy the material world, copy the global world. So we build temples, we decorate the temples with chandeliers, $100,000 chandeliers. We make the temples much more posh and granular than the palaces, and we live a luxurious way of life. So I think he made a very good observation, insist on simple and peaceful way of life, and of course to observe precepts and purify the mind, set an example for the world. So he said here, take the lead, not just to face it, but take the lead. The problem with the world today is materialism is so strong that sometimes Sangha members cannot take the lead, but just follow. Since the world is going on on that materialism path, we also follow. Then the third one, okay, I go to the next one. This one, because we are talking about Sangha laity relationship. Sangha members, yes, they need to upgrade themselves. They need to know more about the mundane world. They need to set example, lead. But for lay people like us, we have to continue with the traditional role of making offering, because that is a very special characteristic of Buddhism between the lay people and the monk. We have a very special relationship. Then we need to establish that connection. So by making offering, there is a connection here. But not only that, must also improve themselves and shoulder responsibility like what was done during the Buddha time, such as to learn, to practice, and to propagate the Dhamma. And last one, to getting themselves organized. Later on, when I talk about Ying Sun in Taiwan, I will show you that he also indicated that lay people must also get themselves organized. And in fact, today, many parts of Asia now, a lot of lay people are getting themselves organized. That is the trend, okay? And lay people must also consider how to develop themselves to the standard of able to perform as a Buddhist chaplain. I know from my American friends that in the police stations, in the prisons, they do have some Buddhist chaplains. Meaning to say, these people go into the prisons to counsel the prisoners, and we call them the Buddhist chaplains. And actually, we need a lot more of such people. And I saw one of my friends in Australia, monk, when he goes into the temple and goes into the prison to take care of the prisoners, he actually put on the official uniform of the prison. So he looks more like a policeman to enter into the prison to take care of the prisoners. What I'm trying to say is, with the complexity of the world and with many more works that need to be done, certain works are still best performed by lay people. For example, to take care of terminally ill patients in the hospice care centers, we need people who are trained in this subject matter. For monks who have spent their whole life learning the Dhamma, the core business is still on the Dhamma, but for them to devote all their time to become suddenly, like say, healthcare focus, that would be like taking away their core business. Whereas if you have lay people professionally trained, then we'll be able to take care of a wider population. So this would be to me, this would be the future trend, where we need more full-time workers in the lay capacity to help propagate the Dhamma by taking care of the population. So this is my presentation on the lay Buddhism this morning. Okay. Thank you very much. We need a break now.
Yes, please.
Okay. 15 minutes later.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we continue.
Sure.
Okay. We were talking about humanistic Buddhism that was said to be propounded by Venerable Taishi in the 1920 something in China. And Taishi died in the year 1947. And like what was the remark by the scholar Holmes, whatever little influence that Taishi had were actually wiped out after the communists took over. So Holmes made that observation in 1968 when there was a cultural revolution in China, which was a disaster in Chinese history, which almost wiped out completely all the traditional belief systems and practically all the traditional Chinese culture too. But Holmes did not observe or did not make any observation later than that, because we must know that after the 1949, the end of the Civil War in China, when Communist Party of China, CPC, took over China, a group of monks followed the Chiang Kai-shek's forces to enter into Taiwan. So in a way, the humanistic Buddhism that was propagated by Tai Shi was actually carried into Taiwan. And therefore today, we are moving a little bit further now. We are going to that small island, about a quarter size of my country only, in the southern part of China, where the Kuomintang or the Nationalist Party of Chiang Kai-shek moved there in the year 1949, and many monks followed. And one of the monks was Venerable Ying Sun, which we are going to discuss now. So now we are moving to Taiwan, okay? Now before that, just in case, do you have any remarks or comments to make about the earlier lectures before we continue on this? The
Yes.
earlier lectures, yeah.
I have some questions.
Yes.
The chanting that you were using, where did it come from? Who wrote it?
Say again.
The chanting about the Sangha community, and who wrote that chanting?
Training. I don't get you.
Chanting. Do you remember that you say you will chant before the ceremony? On your slides, where that there was a slide about the chanting. Let me see. It's on the legitimacy of lay Buddhism.
Yes.
Yeah, on the one is talking about the chanting, what you were recited. The first one says the community of the blessed ones, disciples, has entered the right way. So the whole thing, who wrote this stuff?
Oh, well, that whole thing is very common in Theravada countries. Whenever we perform Buddhist ceremony, chanting, we have to chant the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. And the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, for example, for the Buddha, we would begin with DPBS13094. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. They were these three. And if you look into the suttas, whenever you mention about the Dhamma, then it will be mentioned, Dhamma, Swakato, Bhagavata, Dhammo, Sanditiko, Akariko, and so on. It will be written like this in the Buddhist suttas. So same thing, whenever you talk about the Sangha, whenever the word Sangha come about, then they will continue with this, Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho, Vichupatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. It is in the Buddhist suttas.
Okay,
And
so it actually,
yes,
so it actually came from the sutta.
Yes, and it's very commonly practiced in all the Theravada countries. Whenever you chant the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, you will chant these verses. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My second question is about the number of monks to represent the Sangha. Who decided it has to be 4, not 3? How do we come up with the numbers?
It was during the time of the Buddha.
Oh, the time of the Buddha?
So you just carry on the practice. You send 4 monks or above to represent a community.
I see. And one more question. Says, I think it's in the Vienna for the Sangha people that one of the rules is they are not supposed to bow to lay people. Is that right?
Actually, I do not know whether there's such a rule or not. I don't think there's such a rule. It's just a customary practice.
I think I heard.
To show mutual respect with the Anjali, with the palms folded, to show mutual respect to each other, that is quite customary. So sometimes we pay respect to the monks like this. The monks also will pay respect to us like this. It's like shaking hands, so it's mutual. But to bow, I'm not so sure whether there was such a forbidden. But normally, just like parents will not bow to their children, but children will bow to them. So this is a kind of a cultural practice.
Okay, good. Thank
There's
you.
no specific. No, you don't have to make a rule to say that children. I as a father, I don't have to bow to you. No, you don't have to make such a rule. There's no rule, but people practice it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else? Okay, if not, then we have to go on to Taiwan now. Okay, for the case of humanistic Buddhism in Taiwan, this will be a longer chapter. I would like to cover this topic. Number 1 is about the teachings of Venerable Yin Sun. Okay. Then I would like to cover the 4 mountains in Taiwan. There are now 4 mountains or 4 big monasteries. In Chinese words, big monasteries, we call them mountains. So, because they are mostly located in mountains. That's why I said earlier, Buddhist temples are in the mountains, not partly because government emperors of those days make it so, and also partly because Buddhist monks like to go into the temple, go into the forest, and actually they build big temples inside there. Okay, so even though they say forest or Chongling in the big forest, actually there's a big temple in the forest, not really in the forest. So there are 4 big mountains: the Fo Guangshan, the Namatram, the Chiji, and the Zhongtai temple. Of all these 4 temples, which are considered very big temples with international influence in China, in the world today, Fo Guangshan, Namatram, and Chiji all use the banner of humanistic Buddhism. So today, whenever people talk about humanistic Buddhism, we can't escape from the fact that we need to discuss these 3 mountains. Okay? Because all of them use the big slogan, humanistic Buddhism. But Zhongtai Temple does not use the word humanistic Buddhism. It has not, it never used the word humanistic Buddhism. Then we need to look at an iconic figure in Taiwan today, said to represent the movement of humanistic Buddhism, Venerable Cao Hui. Okay, so basically these are the contents that we would like to cover inside this chapter. Then now we begin with the Venerable Yin Sun. Venerable Yin Sun. Venerable Yin Sun came to China after the collapse of the Nationalist Party in mainland, when Chiang Kai-shek's forces retreated to Taiwan. So Venerable Yin Sun, one of the monks at that time, followed. Venerable Yin Sun actually was married, and only around the age of 20-something, he became a monk, and he lived until the age of 99. You look at it, 1906 to 2005. He lived until the age of 99. So one of the longest living, one of the longest monk with the longest life. Today, Venerable Xu Yin also more than 90 now. So I think to get long life, maybe you should become a monk. Most of the monks live pretty long. Now, Venerable Yin Shun is why we need to pay special attention to him, despite the fact that in the syllabus given to me by University of Karania, no mention was made on Venerable Yin Shun. Perhaps they were not aware of the importance of Venerable Yin Shun in the humanistic Buddhism. Whereas in the Chinese world, everybody seems to know about Venerable Yin Shun. Now, he is considered one of the most outstanding Buddhist scholars of our present time. He has written about 50 books, including the Miao Yin Chi, which consisted of 24 books totaling 7 billion words. So it's an unsurpassable quantity. He is like a great historian, what is his name already, who wrote who wrote about history. All these great scholars, they wrote volumes and volumes of books. We can't even write 1 or 2 pages, right? Now we want to talk about him because Venerable Shen Yan, Venerable Shen Yan is the founder of the Dharma Drum, one of the 4 mountains in Taiwan. He credited Yin Shun as the first monk to get a PhD. Venerable Yin Shun did not go to any university. He studied by himself. And very interestingly, a lot of monks in China, despite the fact that some of them were actually acknowledged as learned and very knowledgeable, many of them did not go to school. Even like Xing Ying didn't go to school, and but most of them learn by themselves. So it's good that we learn by ourselves. Right? No need to follow the traditional way of going to school. So Shen Yan credited him as the first monk to get a PhD, despite the fact that he actually did not go to school. He learned by himself. He studied by himself. He did not enter, but he did enter Buddhist colleges. Okay, Venerable Yin Shun entered into Minnan Buddhist College, and someone submitted his thesis, or we call it a semi-academic paper, to a university in Tokyo, in Japan, and that university decided to give him a PhD, and that university actually invited him to go and get for the ceremony to be conferred the PhD, but actually also he didn't go. He was not really bothered about it. It's like somebody give you a PhD, but you just say, no, I'm not really that bothered about it, But this also caused a little bit of controversy during his time. It was around 1960 something or 70 when he got his PhD. There were some people in the Buddhist community in Taiwan condemning him for accepting a PhD. Can you imagine? Now today you might find it quite a strange thing for the Buddhist community to condemn him for getting a PhD, saying that a monk should just concentrate on doing his monkish business, not go and get a PhD to decorate yourself. So because of that, he was quite ignored, and he withdrew to become the so-called managing director of the magazine, what I call it, advisor to a Buddhist magazine, of which they publish articles to condemn him. So he withdrew as an advisor to that magazine. Anyway, and then we have this Professor Lan Shifu, one of the Buddhist scholars in Taiwan, who honored him as the first person since Xuanzang, means one of the most outstanding Buddhist monks since Xuanzang. Okay. Well, when Yin Shun heard about this, he said this is an over exaggeration. Okay. And he is said to develop the treatise for human ram Buddhism or 人间佛教. The general English term humanistic Buddhism, when it comes to China or Taiwan, Chinese are very good in playing with words, that's why we have so many names, you see. One name is not enough to confuse you. We use 3 or 4 names. And even the word humanistic Buddhism, when Tai Shi used the word 人生佛教, human life Buddhism, Ying Sun changed it to 人间佛教 or human ram Buddhism. Well, and some claim that there are differences in between these 2 words, 人间 and 人生, and some will tell you that the differences is minimal and there's nothing great about all these things. But it's part of the job of the scholars to keep on create new vocabularies to make the learning more difficult for all of us. Actually, Venerable Ying Sun is said to be a student of Tai Chi because he learned in the Minnan Buddhist College in Fujian province, and that college was the headmaster was Venerable Tai Chi. So Ying Sun can be said to be a disciple of Tai Chi, and he carried the humanistic Buddhism of Tai Chi into Taiwan. Okay, at least in the academic sense. But he disagreed with Tai Chi term of human life Buddhism. So he used the word 人间佛教 instead. So both of them have some arguments between the master and the student over these 2 terms. We will talk about this later. Today, from my own study, I know that there are at least 13 conferences on the teaching of Ying Sun held in Taiwan. So can you imagine, people are holding conferences just to study your teaching. So you can imagine his great influence, especially in the academic world. And there was also at least one held in the mainland China. And in Malaysia also we had one, or perhaps 2, but I remember one where I attended. And then in the year 2004, for the first time in history, 3 groups in China, the so-called 3 mountains in Taiwan, the Fokpang, the Ciji, and the Namatram, jointly organized a seminar on his teaching. Now, this is really a great achievement because Taiwanese mountains usually do not cooperate with each other. Each do things by themselves. Okay, each does things by themselves, and this was made possible because of Venerable Chao Hui. I mentioned in the first slide, Venerable Chao Hui, who managed to gather all these 3 to be supporters for this conference. And of course, when you are a scholar, not everybody would agree with you. So there was a seminar in the year 2016, which was actually entitled, what I call the teachings of Venerable Ying Sun, a memorial seminar, or a seminar held in memory of the great Venerable Ying Sun and his teachings. But it turned out that despite the great titles, the honorable title that they have given to him, they actually presented a lot of papers and with the keynote addresses, mainly targeted at anti-Ying Sun, his teachings. So 2016, actually Ying Sun already passed away. Some of the seminars were organized even when he was alive. Okay. So today, I would say at least 90% of the scholars are supportive or speak well of Ying Sun's teachings, but there are generally about 10% who disagree with him, and of course this debate will just go on, and provided fertile grounds for scholars to continue their work of talking and debating. I just share with you that this phenomenon, I don't think we need to get into their debates. One of the scholars said, Ying Sun's original contribution, why he is great and what are his original contribution? Introduction of modern standards of rationality into the Chinese perception of history. This part is very interesting. The Chinese perception of history, especially in Buddhism, a lot was based on what was mentioned in the or carried on by earlier scholars, and sometimes can be considered as irrational, but Ying Sun's bring in a standard of rationality to try to make the history look at history in a more rational manner. I give an example. In Mahayana Buddhism, it says that the Mahayana suttas were preached by the Buddha, but it was not the right time to be made known to the people at that time. So it was kept at the Naga world, Naga world, and then only at the right time, then Nagarjuna went to the Naga world to fetch the sutta out and to preach, and that was generally accepted as a history of Mahayana Buddhism. But Venerable Ying Sun, himself a Mahayana scholar, refuted this kind of story. So he looked at it from the historical perspective of how Mahayana emerged in India about 600 years after the passing away of the Buddha, from the history that he knows. Okay, so he brings in the rationality into to his work, and his research become more and more academic, and his introduction of academic monographs into the discourse of the Sangha has changed Chinese Buddhist historiography forever. So he is perhaps one of those in our modern times that has brought in a lot of elements of academic research into his papers, to his research work. Whereas traditionally in China, Dharma preachers would just preach from the text that were translated earlier. They would just preach there, but he would look at it and examine it from the academic point of view. Perhaps this was also influenced by the Japanese influence. The Japanese, after the Meiji restoration, sent a lot of Buddhist scholars to USA, where they learned the academic approach of research. And Ying Sun somehow or other also adopted this kind of academic approach in his research work. And it's mentioned here that no one in Chinese Buddhism has done more to lay the foundation for a Buddhism that is able to sustain a dialogue within the scientific study of its own history. That means now we can look at Buddhism with a scientific background, okay, with a scientific history. And no one in Taiwan has done more to accommodate modern standard of historiography in the study of Buddhism, thereby the way in which the way Chinese Buddhists perceive their own traditions. So it is said that actually no one in Taiwan has done more than that to allow for modern standards of how we study history in the study of his Buddhism. Now, Ying Sun mentioned 3 reasons. I mean, rather, scholars identify at least 3 reasons why Ying Sun talked about Ren Qian Fojiao or human ram Buddhism. It was influenced by Tai Chi's thinking. He actually acknowledged, Venerable Ying Sun acknowledged, much of his thinking about Ren Qian Fojiao was in the first place influenced by Venerable Tai Chi. So in this sense, Tai Chi's contribution was quite great. Perhaps he wouldn't know because he died in 1947. So sometimes we have to leave it to history to let us know who actually did a good job. Influenced by Thai's thinking, agree with Tai Chi that Buddhism must emphasize on human life and not on death and ghosts. Okay, now this we agree. Now, this what, but what actually spurred him, agitated him, or motivated him to look into humanistic or Ren Qian Fojiao was in the year 1938 when there was one well-known Confucianist scholar, Liang Suming. This Liang Suming was a well-known Buddhist scholar, Buddhist and Confucianist scholar, who wrote a number of papers and books that had great influence to the overall Chinese culture. And he was a good friend of Venerable Ying Sun. In the year 1938, Venerable Ying Sun, because of the war, he retreated to Wuchang area, or Wuhan, today's Wuhan area. And one day, Liang Suming came and talked to him. Liang Suming said, I am going to stop learning about Buddhism. Buddhism is irrelevant to our present time. The solution is in Confucianism. I'm going to stop learning about Buddhism because Buddhism is not suitable for this place, this time, and it's not relevant to this person. So this gave a big shock to Venerable Ying Sun. Well, if an ordinary person like me go and tell Venerable Ying Sun, I'm going to stop becoming a Buddhist, well, that probably will have no impact at all, right? But Liang Suming had great impact on him because he was a great scholar at that time. And because of that, he mentioned, Liang Suming gave me the input. Buddhism must be this place, this time, this person. Okay? This place, this time, this person. 此地,此时,此人, okay, must be this time. So because of that, now he moved on to explore humanistic Buddhism. And of course, the third factor was he observed the decadent lifestyles of monks and the deterioration and the lack of Buddhist teaching in China at that time. So now we go on here. Tai Chi proposed human life Buddhism or Ren Shen Fojiao, as we felt that that was the way to remedy the traditional but misleading Buddhism for the dead and ghosts. Then Ying Sun opined that not only Buddhism is corrupted with the obsession of death and ghosts, but was also corrupted by the inclusion of gods or deities of all sorts in Mahayana Buddhism. He therefore proposed human ram Buddhism. Talk about the human ram now, because when Tai Chi talk about human life, that human life in our, in the Buddhist concept of samsara and rebirth, sometimes you are in human life, sometimes you will be maybe in the animal life or in the ghost plane or in the what they call God's plane or Deva's plane and things like that. So Ying Sun said he noticed from his study that a lot of Brahma and gods actually crept into Buddhism around the 1st century AD in India. And this has actually corrupted the Mahayana Buddhism. So he therefore proposed human ram Buddhism. We concentrate on our human ram now to promote Buddhism. And therefore, based on the above, he explored the Tripitaka to discover what the Buddha really taught and study the historical development, the historical thought development of Buddhism. So he studied the Tripitaka. Okay, and then he discovered that Buddhism in China not only secularized, mystified with dates and gods, but Buddhism itself also deified and even influenced by witchcraft in India. So he tried to study from the historical perspective and remove all those elements that have crept into Buddhism. Therefore, he opined that not only to remove death and ghosts, but also deities, promote the right teaching that the Buddha had gained enlightenment in this human life, preach the Dharma, form the Sangha in this human life. So in the Anguttara Nikaya, and this is often mentioned in Ying Sun's work, that he quoted from the Anguttara Nikaya, a very important phrase that says, all Buddhas are born in the human realm. No Buddhas went to the ghost plane or to the Deva plane to become Buddha. All Buddhas are born in the human plane. Therefore, he insisted that the Buddha gained enlightenment in this human realm, preached in this human realm, and formed the Sangha also in this human realm. And this is very important. And he emphasized the use of the three human superiority, which I mentioned to you in the first hour of my lecture, in the first lecture. Three human superiority: our memory superior, our willpower superior, and our morality. Okay. So as to build pure land on this earth at this place, this time. So he's talking about now. You know, especially with the background in China, when people are praying to go to the Western paradise or the pure land in the West, Ying Sun say we build pure land on this earth. Okay, pure land on this earth. Therefore, his Renjian Fojiao actually is unlike Tai Chi, which was more superficial. Ying Sun's Renjian Fojiao is built on penetrative observation of the history of Buddhism and based on strong academic knowledge, and that makes a lot of difference. At first, he paid attention to the commentaries and later on the agamas. Agamas in our Pali equivalent means the Nikayas. And this is very interesting because with the 2,000 years of history in China, they spend a lot of time on various suttas like Amitabha Buddha Suttas, Yao Zi Jing, whatever, but very little on the agamas or the equivalent on the Nikayas, which actually we say Theravada Buddhism. So he went into those areas and investigated the history of the compilation of the Maya text and pointed out the biasness in Chinese Mahayana Buddhism. And as a result of his work, Chinese Buddhism that neglected the agamas for 2,000 years began to see the original teachings of the Buddha. Buddhist scholars began to study Buddhism rationally, and Buddhist leaders began to pay attention to the practice of Renjian Fojiao. And he summarized, okay, now he summarized, and I use this summary so that in our very short lecture, we can get an idea of what he was talking about. He summarized the core theme from human Bodhisattva Buddha. That is, from human vows to practice Bodhisattva path, from completion of the Bodhisattva path to become Buddha. This is very akin to what the Tai Chi mentioned when Tai Chi talked about the 5 vehicles, isn't it? Do you remember the 5 vehicles? And then number 2, he mentioned about the doctrinal principle. There must be unity of the Dhamma and the Vinaya, the consistency of Dhamma and Vinaya, unity of dependent arising with voidness, unity of dependent arising with voidness, and the unity of self-benefit and benefit others. So in terms of doctrinal principles, he mentioned at least 3 important things, that the Vinaya and the the Dharma must be compatible. And when we talk about dependent arising or the law of interbeing, this must also be compatible with the idea of oneness. And then not only to benefit ourselves, but also to benefit others. And now this interesting part, where he mentioned about the trends, humanistic Buddhism or Renjian佛教, the trend, where he mentioned at least three important trends that we have to look into. The trend of the era of the youth. So we have to place importance on accepting youth Buddhism, which emphasizes on benefiting others. And the era of this world. Talking about this world now. So this world, we need to preach the Dharma and to perform service to mankind. And the third one is the era of collectiveness, or the era of organizations. And I think he was very observant that after the Second World War, a lot of normal people began to organize themselves. You don't dispatch a type of organizations prior to Second World War. In the past, most countries are ruled by rulers and the subjects. So it's a subject-rulers relationship. Whereas after the Second World War, with the rise of new nation states, common people got themselves organized. And I think he noticed this quite well. So he mentioned about the era of organization. And therefore he mentioned not only the Sangha must be legitimized, lay Buddhists practicing the Bodhisattva path must also be organized to benefit self and others. And because of this part of his teaching, you know, when he mentioned lay Buddhists must also be organized, so all those people who claim or promoted the idea of lay Buddhism quickly got hold of this Ying Sun's teaching and said that Ying Sun supported lay Buddhism. And said that Ying Sun supported that lay Buddhists can also become Sangha members, are also considered as Sangha. So they try to get support from Ying Sun. But of course, there are counter arguments against this. And he also mentioned the fourth major element of his humanistic Buddhism, where he did not forget about the importance of the mind. The core mental development must be based on faith, wisdom, and loving kindness. So these were the four important points that he raised. I think we may need to take a break now so that because this one may take a little bit longer than. Okay, I think we take a break now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll continue now. Just now we were talking about Venerable Ying Shun's concept of Renjian佛教. Now I'd like to look at it from a different perspective now. Renjian佛教may be analyzed from the descriptive or the normative perspective. By descriptive perspective, I mean we are concerned with what humanistic Buddhism is. And by normative, we mean the prescriptive aspect or what humanistic Buddhism should be. So when we talk about descriptive Renjian佛教, it positions Buddhism in the human realm, as advocated by Tai Shi. He described to us what Renjian佛教is all about. So the emphasis is on the human realm, and with this, devotees practice within this human realm. With this concept of humanistic Buddhism, new practices would appear, and then they all believe in gods, ghosts, devas, or even Western paradigm would recede to the back. And what happened after that? What happened? What is the normative sense? Okay. So, because of this general description of what humanistic Buddhism is, and there are many normative paradigms that appear, all in the name of Renjian佛教. Many forms or many normative paradigms of Renjian Huajiao appeared. So in Taiwan, the normative use of Renjian Huajiao means, all these the three big mountains out of the four. To them, Renjian Huajiao means to imitate whatever the secular world is doing. Okay, you follow whatever the secular world is doing. We build hospitals, we build schools, universities, television stations, we print newspapers, and we also do some social services like disasters relief and so on. And we also use Renjian Huajiao as a very effective slogan, which is something very attractive compared with the traditional way of gathering resources. So we gathered human resources, financial resources, properties, and so on, all in the name of Renjian Huajiao. And we even try to influence public opinions, also in the name of Renjian Huajiao. And we also offer arguments, having scholars to argue for the case of humanistic Buddhism. So this is the what you call the actual appearance of so-called humanistic Buddhism in Taiwan. Well, another paradigm that we see in the case of Vietnam, this was used by Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, well-known Vietnamese monk who went over to USA and later to settle down in Paris. In Vietnam, during the war, Thich Nhat Hanh used the word socially engaged Buddhism. So to him, humanistic Buddhism means a Buddhism that is concerned with the political issues at that time, concerned with to be engaged with the social issues at that time, war. Okay, so it took on another different paradigm. So he was not so concerned about building hospital or school or university or all this gathering of resources, but his concentration was on anti-war campaign. Okay, well, that is another form of Renjian Huajiao. So when we talk about Ying Sun's Renjian Huajiao, very interestingly, while he is credited for his work on Renjian Huajiao in the dogmatic sense does not play a major role in his work. Meaning to say, he talked about Renjian Huajiao, but exactly what it is to be, that was not his main concentration actually. Because his main contribution is his extensive historical work that results in a new focus on history, especially that of Indian Buddhism and earlier Agamas and Indian Majjhimika over and against Chinese Mahayana literature. So if you look at the works of Ying Sun, the bulk of his work was actually on history, especially history of Indian Buddhism. And we observe that his main interests were not on how to apply Buddhism to the modern society, but actually he was looking backward to look at the ideas and texts usually in the past in Indian Buddhism. So if you look at his work, then you look at the Miao Ying Chi, they will mention how many 25 or 25 volumes there. A prominent group of his writings that are on preaching the Dhamma and Sutta. For example, the first 7 volumes of Miao Ying Chi were all about the Mahayana Suttas. So a recent compilation of relatively few writings on Renjian Huajiao contains 8 essays of 225 pages, a small amount even compared to 5,000 pages, 5,000 pages of his later 8 semi-academic monograph. What we are trying to say here is that while he advocated Renjian Huajiao, his writings on Renjian Huajiao actually is very minimal. The bulk of his work were on history of Buddhism and mostly based on Indian Buddhism. Okay, so that was an observation. Now we need to look at another issue arising from Tai Chi and Yingsun, arising from their debate over the word 人生佛教 and 人间佛教. Okay, in English we use the same term, humanistic Buddhism, but in Chinese, Tai Shi used the word 人生 and Yingsun used the word 人间. And scholars generally tend to say Tai Shi invented this word 人生 and Yingsun created with this word 人间. But in reality, both terms were interchangeably used, especially before the 1950s. They were just interchangeably used. And the term 人间 was not invented by Yingsun either. It was even used before Tai Shi. Tai Shi himself used the term 人间佛教 when he wrote 建设人间净土论. So we want to look at this from this perspective, that this word 人间 was not invented by Yingsun, and it was also not a new term. It was already used long before even Tai Shi's time. Therefore, the difference between both actually is minimal and mostly artificially constructed, as mentioned by one scholar. It is doubtful that the difference between the two is large enough to credit Yingsun with an important innovation. This is a scholar's remark. But you know, scholars, they always like to make a lot of arguments. Some would say, well, there's a big difference between the 人间 and 人生. And some would tell you there is hardly any difference. And I tend to agree that actually there's hardly any difference. Because if we are educated in Chinese and we know the terms, then and we know the background of their arguments, then we will say that probably there is not much of a difference. But we can't deny the fact that the term 人间佛教 became very popular, especially in Taiwan after the 1950s, due to the regular use by Venerable Yingsun. And sometimes it's good that you live long. You see, when Venerable Yingsun 1950 was almost 50 years old at that time, 45 years old at that time, he lived long enough to propagate this term 人间佛教, whereas his master Tai Shi passed away already in 1947. Now, Yingsun's idea was not without challenge. We have a problem of Yingsun's idea. In fact, it became a quite controversial topic of debate within the academic circles. So they are still going on, the academic debate over the Yingsun's ideas. Because of what he said, people always say that Yingsun claimed that Mahayana is not the words of the Buddha. 大乘非佛说. So he actually had debate with his teacher, Venerable Tai Shi. So I think we cannot go into the detail of this academic debate. Suffice to say that Yingsun actually said that he was accused of saying that Mahayana is not the words of the Buddha. And in response, he said he was actually like arguing that even Theravada, the sutta text and so on, they were not exactly the words of the Buddha. They only convey the meaning, the message from the Buddha, but not the exact word by word of the Buddha. So what he was trying to argue was Mahayana text may not be actually spoken by the Buddha, but the earlier Mahayana texts were carrying the Dhamma preached by the Buddha. Of course, this argument made the other side more angry because they insisted that whatever Mahayana text mentioned, it was mentioned by the Buddha. So this debate is still going on. And Yingsun's another idea that aroused a lot of debate and controversy is his idea of Western Pure Land. This concept of Pure Land is different, and his emphasis is on building pure land on this earth. And going to the Western paradise does not mean that you go there and do nothing. You have to, the pure land is to be built and cultivated, to be invented, so to say, 创造净土, not to go there and enjoy a so-called pure land. So these are the academic debates that are going on even till today. Okay, that was on Venerable Yin Sun. Now we go on to discuss about the four mountains. Okay, four mountains. I want to start with Fo Guang Shan. Okay, I think most of you know about Fo Guang Shan, right? And if you Google and look at the images, you will notice that the headquarters of Fo Guang Shan in Taiwan is a huge monastery. Huge monastery. I can't describe how big it is. It's a huge monastery. But I was told by people in Fo Guang Shan, this is not their biggest monastery. Their biggest monastery is the Venerable Yin Xin's original monastery in Yangzhou in China today. It's even bigger than the one in Taiwan. This is Venerable I'm influenced by the word
星云，
Xing Yun.
星云法师，
Venerable Xing, Venerable Xing established,
Yes.
he established Fo Guang Shan in 1967. Okay. Now I want to talk something about the humanistic Buddhism of Fo Guang Shan. Xing Ying said humanistic Buddhism is taught by the Buddha. I am only a promoter. Hui Nen, the six patriarchs Hui Nen and Tai Shi are also promoters. It's not a new idea. It was the Buddhism taught by the Buddha. That's why I shared with you my first lecture on the humanistic nature of Buddhism. And Xing Ying reiterated here that humanistic Buddhism was taught by the Buddha. And I am only propagating it again. Okay. Now this is more interesting. He said, my thoughts on humanistic Buddhism is not influenced by any particular person. It is from my born character. I'm born like that. So my humanistic Buddhism is not influenced by any particular person. Whereas if you look at the academic world, a lot of researchers tend to say that the humanistic Buddhism today is influenced by Yin Sun, and Yin Sun was influenced by Tai Shi. So if you trace, everybody will say the humanistic Buddhism of Taiwan today was due to the contribution of Venerable Tai Shi. But if we analyze it deeper, we will notice that everybody used the slogan humanistic Buddhism, but everybody used it differently and interpreted it differently. So maybe he was influenced by the term humanistic Buddhism, but clearly the Venerable Xing Ying himself said, my thoughts on humanistic Buddhism is not influenced by any particular person. Okay. So he said, when Xing Ying was much younger than Tai Shi, so he said when Tai Shi talked about revival of Buddhism, he talked about revival of the teaching, revival of the Sangha, and revival of properties. So the three revivals proposal that I have mentioned to you earlier. I was young and didn't know much about it, but I know Buddhism must have some outdated or unworthy things. Therefore, must have these revivals to ensure its survival in society. And I supported this idea strongly. So descriptively, he agreed that we must do something. Okay. So Xing Ying Fa Shi said, I have not really met Venerable Tai Shi. It was in 1947 when he came to my temple, and as a young monk, I was lining up to welcome him. 1946, actually just 1 year before Venerable Tai Shi passed away. So at least he got an opportunity to meet him before he passed away. So I was lining up, and Tai Shi passed by, and he looked at me and said, good, good, good. Chinese say, how? Chinese greeting, 你好吗, 你好吗? But here he said, how? It's just a general way of greeting. But you are a smart fella, you have further interpretations on the words. How? I meditated in my mind and made the wishes. I must be good in my conduct and speech, good in watching my mind, good in my Dharma study, good in my manners, good in preaching the Dharma, good as a monk. So sometimes just a few words can have a great impact on your life. Okay? So Venerable Singing summarized his ideas on humanistic Buddhism. He said, anything spoken by the Buddha, needed by human beings, is pure, good, and beautiful. All these teachings that are helpful in the promotion of human well-being are humanistic Buddhism. So when I went through these verses spoken by the Singing, I realized that this was very much akin to what was said by the Buddha when the Buddha sent the 60 arahants in 60 directions. When the Buddha sent the 60 arahants in 60 directions to preach the Dhamma, the Buddha said, Charatta bhikkhave charikang, bahujana hitaya, bahujana sukhaya, lokanu kampaya, attaya hitaya sukhaya, eva manusanam. So when the Buddha first sent 60 arahants in 60 directions and he himself in another direction, so they all together 61 directions to preach the Dhamma, the Buddha mentioned Charatta bhikkhave charikang, go forth monks, go. Bahujana hitaya, bahujana sukhaya, lokanu kampaya. Bahujana sukhaya, for the happiness, for the well-being. Lokanu kampaya, showering compassion on the entire world. Loka is world. Kampaya, compassion. Lokanu kampaya, showering compassion for the world. Attaya hitaya sukhaya deva manusanam, for the good, for the welfare, for the happiness of gods and human beings. You find this in Vinaya Pitaka. So when you look at this, this was very much what Singing said was actually what was actually mentioned by the Buddha much earlier, 2,500 years ago, to go out and preach the Dhamma, which is benefit, which were out of compassion for the welfare, for the happiness of gods and men, everybody. You know, usually when I look at these verses by the Buddha, I admire the wisdom of the Buddha in coming up with this statement, because this statement, if we are a student in management, we talk about vision, mission, strategies. You can find this, I call it the mission statement of the Buddha, mission statement given by the Buddha, and you find that this mission statement gives you the strategy. The strategy is go forth in different directions. And it gives you the mission. The mission is to bring happiness, happiness to everyone. And then it tells you the ground, the premises. Why you do this? Out of compassion for the world. So it is a very good mission statement. It's very pretty complete. So now we look at the objective of Fo Guangshan as mentioned in their promotion materials. Number one is to promote humanistic Buddhism, build Buddha's Pure Land. Okay, now the first part, promote humanistic Buddhism. What sort of humanistic Buddhism? Of course, this would be different from what the idea preached by Tai Shi. This is Singing's own idea of what humanistic Buddhism is all about. And to build Buddha's Pure Land, he used the term Fo Guang Jing Tu. Fo Guang means the Buddha light. The Buddha light's pure land. I think it's a choice of words rather than to say about 人间净土 to talk about the pure land of the present land, but to use a different term of the Buddha's pure land. But the emphasis is on building pure land here on earth, not to encourage people to chant the Amitabha to go to the Western paradise. And then the second objective was to build the Fourfold Assembly promote universal peace. The Fourfold Assembly refers to the monks and the nuns, the laymen and the lay people. This is called the Fourfold Assembly, and to promote universal peace. So here he talked about organizations to have the Fourfold Assembly. I remembered in 1985 when I visited San, and I had a discussion with a professor, and we talked about the mountains in Taiwan at that time, Wokwang and Tzu. And I mentioned to that professor, I think Tzu will become much stronger, much more successful because it has a lay organizations. It has a very strong lay organizations. Whereas Wokwang, at that time, only monks and nuns. They do not have a strong lay organization. Fortunately, my prediction did not come true because soon after that, Wokwang San started to organize its lay people. So today we have Wokwang Buddha Light International Association. We have lay organizations, and Wokwang even appointed lay preachers. So in that way, Wokwang was building a fourfold assembly. Wokwang San's devotees are advised to follow the four guiding principles: to offer others confidence, to offer others joy, to offer others hope, and to offer others convenience. 给人信心，给人欢喜，给人希望，给人方便。It means the four offering. Now, if you look at these terms, these were not the terms used by the Buddha. If you look at the terms used by the Buddha, we talk about compassion, we talk about metta, karuna, but Xun Yun used new terms, perhaps more attractive to the contemporary audience, new terms. But when I look at all these four terms, I said, this is actually a summary of metta. Well, no, I look at these four terms, I think this master is very clever. If you talk about metta, Cipei, until today nobody understands exactly what is Cipei or what is metta. But if you translate it into actions to offer others confidence, it's a form of metta. When people are doing something, you come and give them some words of encouragement or to build up their confidence. It's a form of metta. And when people are successful in their endeavor, we praise them, we give them joy. It's also a form of metta. Then, when people feel so helpless or fail in their activities, we come along with the words of consolation. We offer them hopes. So, and then we make things easy and for people. It's convenience. So this is metta in action, right? So I said this is a repackaging traditional Buddhist terms in modern terms to attract people much more conveniently. And if we look at some of these terms, it can relate to our life much easier rather than just to talk about metta, we must practice metta. For example, I give one example to offer others convenience. If someone WhatsApp you something or send you a WeChat something, and you immediately reply, you actually make life easy for him. You offer him a convenience. But a lot of time, people write us email, people write us WhatsApp, expecting us to reply. We either don't reply or we reply late. It means we don't have much metta. So in running my organization, sometimes I have to WhatsApp to my cohorts, my colleagues, please have some metta for me. Please reply this message. Okay. Actually, when we say metta, it's supposed to be used in our daily life. And yet, most of the time, we say metta, but in our daily habits, we don't do this. So I think Bo Pang San Xing Yun's words are very helpful in helping us to translate the teachings into daily actions. Zhang Xunyun, this person is the, I think he is the chairman of the Chinese Social Science Academy, Chinese Social Science Academy, head of religious study. He tried to identify the rise of humanistic Buddhism in Taiwan, not because of the need for implementing Zen teaching, rather is the result of serious challenges posed by modern living to traditional Buddhism. Venerable Xing realized that society is ever changing and people's demand for rationality and practice are ever increasing. Hence, Buddhism cannot be passive and otherworldly, but must open its door and go into the society and be of benefit to mankind. I think he raised a very pertinent point that the rise of humanistic Buddhism actually is a response to serious challenges posed by modern living in Taiwan. This is important part that I would like to bring up later. That not so much the so-called humanistic Buddhism in Taiwan is not so much because of the influence of Tai Chi's teaching or Ying Sun's teaching, but more of a response to modern living, more of a response to the modern living in Taiwan today. So it comes as a social response, not because of the influence of a particular teaching. That is also my point in my analysis of the situation. But no doubt we cannot escape from the fact that the humanistic Buddhism advocated by Tai Chi and Xing Yun, when viewed from the Buddhist thoughts, when you look at it from the point of view of thoughts, it derives its essence from Chan or Zen Buddhism, and is a logical development of Buddhism from its traditional Chinese cultural background. That means even though it is a response to the modern needs, but the thoughts, the ideas behind actually is based on Zen Buddhism. It's also great effort towards modernizing as existing way of life, trying to embrace modern way of life. Our way of life now is different, modern, and we try to embrace new way of life. Then, from the cultural perspective, it is a movement to popularize Buddhism, a movement to infuse Buddhist culture into a secular culture. The secular culture, the mundane culture, the worldly life that we are living today, we need a movement to popularize Buddhism, and that movement, we call it humanistic Buddhism. Outwardly, it is to redirect focus from monastic life to household life, to descend from the mountain into the towns and villages, and to walk up from the sutra tower to the society and even to the world. Now, this is an observation that in order to respond to the modern world that we are living now today, the Buddhist monks cannot just be, Buddhism cannot be just be restricted to monastic life. Okay, we have to go on to the household life to have influence on people's daily life. Okay, and we have to come down from the mountains into the towns and villages. So no more reclusive way of life where we spend most of our time meditating or whatever, in the mountains, but to come down from the sutra towers, not just to preach the teachings, but to the society, to serve the society. So that's the basis of Buddhism. Now, today, just now we mentioned that for Kwangshan, the Venerable Shin said, I am not a follower of any particular, I'm not influenced by any particular person. It is my personal character. I like to do it that way. And because of that, now we have so-called the Four Kwangshan Xingyin model, or the Xingyin's model of humanistic Buddhism. 心因模型的人间佛教, the Xingyin model of humanistic Buddhism. And this is compiled into a book. This is compiled into a book by Venerable Mani on the humanistic model of Buddhism. So sometimes it's good that you must have good students who would help you to compile what you do, and you will become famous later. Okay, so you know, a few months ago I met a monk in Penang, and he told me, you know why some of the monks are so famous? Well, some of the monks, they did good job, but they were not well known. And I say, why? He said, because number one, because they were scholars. So because you are scholars, you tend to write a lot, talk a lot, so you become well known. Whereas some monks or nuns, they were not scholars, so they did their jobs, but quietly. So they become less well known. That doesn't mean they didn't contribute. They did contribute, but not well recorded and not well known. So first, you must become a scholar. Okay. The second one, he said, because they have good students, and their students always like to write something about their teachers, and not one student, many students will write about their teachers, and so soon they become very famous. So this is an interesting part. So Venerable, we have this Xingyin's model wrote by this Mani, where he listed there are 20 over characteristics to make this model different from other people's model. Okay, this humanistic model of Kwangshan is different from other models. But we have 20 over characteristics. We can't be talking about them today, but at least we try to summarize some of them. Number one, he said the Dharma preaching language is different. The Dharma preaching language, the language used by the Xingyin when he preached, is different from other people. And which the example I gave you just now, really so. So instead of talking about metta and karuna, we have been talking about it for 2,000 years without much understanding. He repackaged. Today, you know, people like repackaging. So he repackaged and he talked about to offer people's confidence, joy, hope, and convenience. So, and his teaching is always in touch with the pulse of the current situation. So instead of talking about in the past, giving examples from the past, giving example from the time of the Buddha, or giving the example during the time of the Tang Dynasty, he would talk about examples of the current situations. Maybe today when we preach about Dharma, we talk about COVID-19. We don't talk about the pandemic that happened during the time of the Buddha, and the Buddha preached the Ratana Sutta. Well, of course you can still talk about that, but you want to have a connection to the people of the present day, you talk about current situations. Okay? So his teaching, compatibility of the Dhamma and the mundane teachings. So he tried to sync between the Dhamma, what was preached by the Buddha, and the mundane teachings, put them together. And use of illustrations and little stories. And you know, Venerable Shinging is very famous for telling little stories. When I was, he came to Malaysia, and he had one of the biggest Dharma talks ever held in his lifetime. Even in Taiwan, you don't have that. We had it in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, where it was claimed that at least 50,000 people were present to listen to his talks. And I was there with a lot of my friends who were politicians, ministers, and so on. They were there together, and the event supposed to have started at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and end at 10 p.m. at night. It was a long event, but actually Venerable Shinging appeared something like 8 p.m. And after some ceremony and everything, he spoke for only actually 20 minutes. He spoke for only 20 minutes, and of that 20 minutes, he told a few stories, and that's the end. So my Dhamma, my politician friends, what? I can't have to listen to just these few stories, and that's it. So to some people, it was like a very high expectation, you know, but ended up with the stories. But to many other people, these stories were very interesting. Okay, so people remember stories. People can't remember your dependent origination or Four Noble Truths or Eightfold Noble Path. People can't remember that, but people remember all the stories. And I could still remember one of the stories he told. So, use of illustrations and stories. And of course, the next one is conduct and speech in sync. This is like we mentioned the conduct of the Buddha, Vichara Charana Sampanno. Conduct and teachings are together. So this one we can see in Venerable Shinging's daily life, how whatever that he preached, he actually implemented. For example, to offer people convenience. When I was in Fort Guangsan, we were supposed to stay there for one night in Fort Guangsan. A typhoon came, and we were held back. And then at that time, Fort Guangsan, I think Venerable Shinging was in USA. But he told his people there to take good care of us. A group of us, there were about 20 of us. Because of that, you accommodate you another night. Okay, we will take care of you. So he thought about our convenience. So this is conduct and speech in sync. Okay? And then number two, we say this unique characteristics of the Four Guangsan model. Dharma propagation method is different. So he mentioned about this author Mani mentioned about the methods to propagate Buddhist teaching through cultural activities. All this while, we thought to preach the Dhamma means, okay, have a Dhamma preaching session, talk about the Dhamma, open the text. Okay, today we talk about the Amitabha Buddha Sutta, blah, 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 and go on and talk about this. But for Guangsan's method, go through the newspaper, go through the magazines, go through cultural performances, many other ways, we call it today the soft ways, to promote the teachings of the Buddha. So, for example, for Guangsan even set up the prizes or grants for writers, for outstanding essays. So in that way, you attract a lot of people who are good in writing to Buddhism. So that is the way that it was used. Then to foster talent through education. You know, many people mistaken Fort Guangsan as a center for tourism. because of its huge temple and the grandeur and the posh setting. So many people, when visiting Taiwan, would like to go and see Fort Guangshan as a tourist center. But in fact, in my first conversation with Venerable Xingyi, way back in 1985, he mentioned the objective of Fort Guangshan is Dharma education, not tourism. Okay, so I can understand that the focus of Fort Guangshan actually was on Dharma education, and that's why today you have at least about 1,000 monastics within the Fort Guangshan establishment. So through education, they promoted a lot of people. They actually helped to develop a lot of people. And if you are ambitious, Fort Guangshan would send you for further education. And today, they have produced many PhD students. And Fort Guangshan's colleges, Buddhist colleges, even the one in Malaysia here, are free of charge. You can always come as a student. It's free of charge. And every year, there's one trip for you to go to the main temple in Taiwan, also free of charge, to connect with the rest of the world. And then, of course, to benefit society through charitable programs. So Fort Guangshan is also very well known for its charitable programs. At least in Malaysia now, I noticed the Fort Guangshan in Malaysia is publicity on charity works actually even supersede Siji now, because they have very good connections even with the press, with the newspapers, and not forgetting the next the important one, to train the human minds. So they also have a lot of Fa Hui or Dharma assembly for purification of the mind. And the third one, the vow to work for Buddhism is different. From individual to the masses, from monastery to Buddhism, from individual to the masses. So we not only talk about serving our individual self, but also to the masses. And then from monasteries to Buddhism. So Fort Guangshan is a monastery. And what I heard is Xingyi's advice to the monks and nuns in Fort Guangshan. At the early stage, you have to be concerned with monastery to build up Fort Guangshan. But at the later stage, you must expand beyond this monastery to build up Buddhism. And I think that is really great. That shows the very wide scope, the very visionary perspective of Venerable Xingyi. We call it Da Ge Ji, be able to see beyond his monastery. And this is something that demands a lot of courage and mental development, because most people would like to confine to their own establishment, so that you can massage your ego from time to time. Okay? Now, from Buddhism to other religions. So it's not only about Buddhism now, it also branch off to have dialogues and interactions with other religions. And not only that, from monastic to lay people, like I said earlier, now they have a lot of connections to lay people. And then if they talk about human rights, but also to the rights of living beings, to help all other living beings. For example, what we call the function or the release of life. And even went to the extent of unification to peace, from unification to peace. She's talking about unification with mainland China. Fort Guangshan actually is a member of the Kuomintang even until today, okay? And then the next one, objective of enlightenment is different. Talking about enlightenment, talking about spiritual practice, we talk about pure land in the humanistic Buddhism. Talk about pure land. Okay, and the Pure Land is about Pure Land here, not Pure Land in the West. Okay, and to be responsive to whatever development in the world. So this is the Xingyin model as penned by Mani Fasu. So time is up. So we'll continue later today. We will talk about, still about Popangzan. We will talk about a very interesting topic. Is Xingyin a political monk? Okay. Since we are on humanistic Buddhism, we have to explore all these topics. Okay, so we will end here. When we resume, if you have any question, it's best that you get it ready. Straight away we can discuss. Then before we proceed further. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.